A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I'm Karthik Krishnan from Targus Events. Thank you all for taking the time to join the Cyber Warriors Conclave. Today, we're connecting with senior executives and experts responsible for protecting their company's infrastructures with innovative solution providers and information security experts. We will learn from them on how to protect and defend our businesses from cyber attacks during interactive panels and fast-track discussions. A thank you to our partners, FireEye and Network Perception. The conclave will kick off with a keynote speech on cybersecurity for digital transformation by Dr. Hussein Al-Wasli, the Director of Information Technology from Jubail Energy Services Company. This will be followed by a presentation on ransomware against the machine, how adversaries are learning to disrupt industrial production by targeting IT and OT by our partner FireEye, followed by the importance of network segmentation in the age of ransomware by our partner Network Perception. This will be followed by a panel discussion on cyber resilience in energy with speakers from Saudi Aramco, Advanced Petrochemical Company, National Oil and Gas Authority, Network Perception, and a leading oil company from the GCC. Then our final panel discussion on cyber attacks within the energy industry with speakers from one of the GCC's leading electricity company, TAQA, and another leading petroleum company from the GCC, Engie Middle East, and Network Perception. Over to you, Dr. Hussein. The screen is all yours.
Thank you. And let me just share my presentation. Okay, Hussein Al-Wasli, Dr. Hussein Al-Wasli, and have around more than 20 years experience in different industrial sectors and related to IT fields. So I have just short time. Let us dive to the presentation and go ahead with our topic. Okay, I believe that you hear about the first, as introduction, let me talk about Colonial pipeline that got attacked by ransomware. And for this, as a result of this attack, the gas prices hit $3 a gallon for the first time in nearly 7 years, according to ABC News. This is show us that how is cyber security is something must, not just only nice to have. And from this thing,
sorry, Dr. Hussein, can you please switch on your camera? I think your camera is not on. Apologies.
Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, the presentation is visible, but your camera is not, you are not visible.
Yes, give me a minute.
Sorry for the interruption. Yeah, now you're visible. Perfect.
Okay. Let me jump to second slide that talking about how the ransomware family is starting growing since 2019 and 2020. Each family might has more than several type of ransomware, and that is give us an indication to open our eyes and to make sure about our digital transformation and cybersecurity that running together in parallel to make sure that we are in the safe side. Going from this slide, talking about what Mr. Bit Lindstrom said, regardless of whether highly publicized breach were directly linked Digital transformation, linked to digital transformation that got business leader thinking again about risk and solution that minimize risk. And that will jump, let us go and jump to more key actions. In this slide, I'm gonna talk about some important key actions to have successful digital transformation and the importance of cybersecurity for digital transformation. So let's start with the first key action about alignment of security strategies to business goal. As a matter of fact, the first and foremost, a sustainable cybersecurity strategy supports the business. It aligns its action with the enterprise goals and ensures the right balance between mitigating risk and enabling business innovation. As such, cybersecurity is a prerequisite for successful running business, and those in charge of security must map everything onto business imperatives, while avoiding those issues that are only relevant to IT decision making. This shift in thinking delivers benefits beyond security alone. It allows our people to work more productively, innovate faster, and implement projects more quickly at lower cost. Also, at the same time, satisfying those customers who trust you with their personalized information. So in short, this key action is a must for digital business. Jumping to second key action about finding the balance between risk and reward. In fact, today, perhaps more than ever, your organization needs to work with risk-based decision-making. That means understanding the risk of digital transformation initiatives and whether the business benefit outweighs the cost of managing them. For example, enabling your employees to work from home or any other location enforces greater risk that their devices will be infiltrated and used to access the corporate network. Yet, it is hard to ignore the finding that those organizations that established more remote working and implementing measures to manage the security risk have seen less disruption compared to those who were unable to do so. In addition, they have strengthened their business resilience. In other words, a risk-based approach enables clear, fact-driven decision-making based on the best outcome for your company. As such, decision must take into account the technology, people, and processes involved in your organization. Now that dispersed workforce and remote customer have become central to our future, the most successful organization will adapt to protect their revenue and their reputation in the long term. Also, it is important they will strive to create outstanding digital experience that set them apart from the competition. Going to third action, key action, which is about run your future business with cybersecurity. In fact, this key action needs to be considered by implementing several sub-actions, such as secure by design. Business risks go beyond cybersecurity and extend to long-term survival of organization. Your enterprise will have to address the challenges and opportunity to bring about competitive advantage while neutralizing new cyber risk. In order to deliver resilience and lead the change, digital leaders will need to securely adapt their customer experience, everyday operation, and employee experience as well. Another factor to achieve this key action is customer experience, which is a key. Consumer now expect a seamless and personalized experience, highlighted in an article by Forbes. 1/3 of those who ended their relationship with company did so because the experience was not personalized enough. However, a user experience that bring advantage for your customer require their data to be collected and analyzed. For both, the benefit of business and the consumer is necessary to find the balance between protecting and serving your customer. By putting the right measures in place, cybersecurity becomes the foundation of retaining trust with customer. This is because it can provide an enhanced and highly personalized user experience without risking their personal data. As your user enjoy trusted access to resources and information from anywhere in the world, this is a secure customer journey can easily become a competitive advantage. Going to key action number 4, drive productivity and convenience. Since they go hand in hand, cybersecurity need to support and underpin digital transformation because secure data and systems are cornerstones of business success. In turn, digital transformation needs to support new business models that appeal to customers while making daily work easier for employees. A risk-based approach that balances acceptable risk against convenience means that security teams can focus their attention on helping your organization thrive, as well as security needs to proceed at the same pace as all of the other innovation with the digital transformation, so as not to hamper progress. Furthermore, security measures that are built to enable usability are much more likely to be accepted and adapted by your user. In addition, security teams must be equipped to predict, detect, and respond to these risks. This involves having the right security monitoring tools, collecting the right information, and providing this data to the right system and right people so they can assess and react in time. Last key action, build a secure culture. For digital transformation to be a success, cybersecurity has to be seen as an important driver for your larger business goals, adding competitive advantage to product value proposition, the customer experience, employee productivity, and supply chain framework as well. Digital business need to be embed security into the very core of their systems and processes. Actually, they have to build a secure and convenient user experience, as well as create digital value chain that protect your customer data. However, digital transformation is not just something that the IT department applies to your organization. It is far more complex. In fact, through digital transformation that deliver game-changing results means bringing together all the right ingredients and all the right people. For example, in the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated the importance of a secure culture within the organization. Cyber attacks relied on common moves and tactics, which turned out successful when used many employees working from home. As important as reskilling and upskilling employees is collaborating with trusted partners, so your organization is better equipped to adjust to change. And this is of specific importance when it comes to cybersecurity measures. You will need experienced experts you can trust to secure your business, to keep and unlock more of advantage that new technologies promises and delivers. Finally, digital transformation projects worth billions of dollars are being jeopardized by poor relationship between cybersecurity and networking teams. According to cloud security firm Netscope, which has released a new study exploring how a lack of collaboration between specialist teams can hamper large IT projects. I hope it was not long and meet the time. Thanks for you and be safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hussain, for a very insightful and interesting presentation. Up next, we have a presentation on ransomware against the machine, how adversaries are learning to disrupt industrial production by targeting IT and OT, by Muat Sakaji, who's the lead ICS and OT security consultant for the Middle East and Africa region at Mandiant FireEye. Over to you, Mr. Muat.
Thank you, and just allow me please to make sure you see the right screen in the right mode. So this way. Can you confirm that you see the presentation in full screen mode?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. Welcome to the presentation where we are going to discuss today how adversaries are learning to disrupt industrial production by targeting IT and OT. The presentation or the presentation flow for today will start by providing a brief introduction about myself. Then we will give a brief timeline of ICS security and how the incidents or cybersecurity incidents has evolved. And then we'll move to the recent observations. And finally, we will finish with the key takeaways. As a beginning, who am I? My name is Muad Sakaji. I look after Mandiant's ICS security practice in Middle East and Africa. I started my career as an automation engineer, so I have spent some really good time in the plants, spent some time with the likes of, not the likes, way smarter people than Homer Simpson. I can assure you, equally fun and humorous, but way smarter than him. This was before I shifted my career to securing the systems I used to build and secure and engineer. And the turning point was definitely Stuxnet, when we realized as the automation industry that these systems that we are assuming that they are safe, they are secure, they are working. In fact, someone sitting somewhere really far away, he can control those systems. And that's when I decided that I should make that move to cybersecurity to secure the systems that I used to build and engineer and design. A quick brief timeline of cybersecurity incidents. So the whole story started with Stuxnet in 2010, when it was the first proof that actually something bad could happen from a cybersecurity perspective on industrial control systems. Before 2010, everything was just theories. We assumed, or industry assumed, that these bad things could happen. Some hackers can actually target these systems. But at that time, oh, it's very rare. It never happened. We are not sure. That's really remote probability. However, with Stuxnet, when the Iranian nuclear facilities at Natanz were targeted by a malware that specifically targets variable frequency drives in the centrifugal devices, causing them to start on and off in a very short period of time, causing a surge in the current, eventually causing the centrifugal devices to burn out. If this attack delayed the Iranian nuclear project by a period estimated between 10 months to 16 months. Some experts estimate it's more than that. Sorry. However, the agreement is that the importance of Stuxnet is that it demonstrated how severe the consequences of cybersecurity can be on industrial control system security. After that, we entered an era where it was only Stuxnet, nothing after Stuxnet. It appeared to be as a very specific incident isolated from everything. From 2011 to 2013, we started seeing the era of vulnerability discovery, where we are seeing every other day a new vulnerability discovery in ICS systems from all vendors, Siemens, Honeywell, Yokogawa. All OEMs actually have reported, or OEM products actually have been reported to have some serious vulnerabilities. It stayed like this till we entered the era of weaponization, where we actually started seeing initial ICS malware discoveries like the Black Energy 2 and the Havix. But the nature of these malwares were not really heavy, were not really severe, and they were not really destructive till we have seen Industroyer in 2015 and 2016, or crash override as some industry experts call it, where we actually have seen full realization of attacker capabilities, where wide area of electricity from Ukraine were actually targeted and shut down, caused a blackout in a large geographical area in a big country like Ukraine. However, in 2017, Mandiant responded to an incident where attackers actually targeted safety system, SIS, or emergency shutdown systems, using Triton. And our consultants were actually on the ground responding to the incident. And the problem with this, or the criticality of this malware, is that it attacks safety instrumentation system, or emergency shutdown systems. Emergency shutdown systems, as you all know, they are the guardian, they are the systems who protect us in the energy sector specifically, more than any other industry. When something really bad happens, they're gonna make sure the system goes to the fail-safe and protect us in these circumstances. If we look at these type of incidents, we can notice that they are usually targeting production, and the actors behind them is usually nation state, or to a less extent, insiders or hacktivists. So it's mainly nation states trying to harm other nations for geopolitical reasons, by targeting specifically the CNI, critical national infrastructure, by causing a stop of the production. That's why we always said in OT security, we always talk about AIC, availability is the more important, and these incidents were in line with this, this approach. However, recently, we have seen the US fuel pipeline paid hackers $5 million in ransomware, as a response to the ransomware, and it's in the news. Like, Mandiant was involved in responding to that ransomware and to that incident specifically. And the shift that we have seen in this one is actually, it's not anymore nation states, it's not anymore people or attackers trying to gain geopolitical advantage. No, they are actually doing this for financial purposes, and this has expanded the threat landscape, the threat surface massively, to include the cyber criminals, cyber financial group crimes, to enter the game, the game of OT security, and trying to gain leverage for financial purposes, of course. Now, if we move to the recent observations, how did that lead? Why did that happen? How did it happen? So we have seen that organized financial crime actors have demonstrated an ability to disrupt OT assets even before the last Colonial Pipeline attack. So that trend has existed a little bit before the Colonial incident, and we have seen that trend increasing, or the trend of financial crime groups interested in OT is increasing. Now, why did that happen? If we read the news, and this is a screenshot from a news article that says basically hackers behind Colonial Pipeline reportedly received $90 million in Bitcoin before shutting down. So these guys are actually, they got $90 million in Bitcoin. In general, as a ransom, companies paid them $90 million for their crime. They are rewarding them for their crime, basically. So basically, this amount of money and the specific nature for OT makes it really a great blend, or a great mix between high reward and less mature infrastructure in OT, which could entice more attackers actually to do more and target OT more and more. Because you have a high reward, it's a very critical infrastructure. You don't want to leave your environment shut down. You don't want to keep your production shut down. So you are willing to pay more than actually others. And the less mature infrastructure also makes it easier for attackers to target. However, actually, when I read this news, it made me laugh a little bit. They didn't mean to create problems, and the article says literally they were just trying to make some money, and that explains the government pressure behind or right after the Colonial pipeline to actually shut down the operations of DarkSide, the ransomware as a service malware that actually behind the Colonial pipeline. And they actually operate on a ransomware as a service model where operators and partners actually share the profit. They just provide them access and provide organizations access, and any organization can use that DarkSide malware to gain the access and deploy a ransomware on the environment. So again, how did that happen? Let's take a step back and look at the previous two incidents, Triton and Indestroyer, from the funnel of opportunity point of view. From a funnel of opportunity point of view, we have observed that according to the Purdue model of architecture, we can see the higher the layers you go in the Purdue model of architecture, the higher attacker presence. However, for OT environments, the lower you go, the higher attack severity. So you will see in both attacks, the Triton and the Indestroyer, attackers actually have gained the initial access in the IT environment first, jump to the DMZ, jump to the DCS, SIS, and then eventually to the SIS controller. Now, how did that actually evolve into the recent ransomware activities? So we can see that attackers actually have followed the similar approach by gaining initial access to the IT environment, jumping from that, spend some time in the environment, know exactly what are your environment, know exactly what are your crown jewels, and in CNI, what a better crown jewel than actually targeting your production. So that's why they went for the production. They can delete the backup, spend some time in the environment, delete the backup, make sure they cause the maximum possible impact and damage. And that is what we are calling the post-compromise approach, instead of the shotgun indiscriminate approach where just you deploy a NetPetya or Bad Rabbit malware where you actually randomly hit computing assets. No, with the post-compromise approach, you specifically target the highest critical crown jewels of your environment. Talking again with the dark side, so if we look at the TTPs that is used by DarkSide, which is the malware behind the recent attack, the Colonial pipeline. So from an initial compromise perspective, we are looking at the same techniques that are used in targeting IT, established foothold, again, the same escalate privilege. We are talking about mimikatz, LSAS process memory dumps, exploiting vulnerabilities. So if you look at the entire lifestyle of the attack, we can see actually the same TTPs for targeting our IT are basically used to target OT. So there isn't really something specific for technology that is specific to like Siemens or Honeywell or Yokogawa. No, you are using IT techniques to target OT techniques, the same methodology, the same TTPs, and eventually you use the DarkSide ransomware deployment generated via PSXX so that you can run the ransomware and do the encryption before you do the damage and you ask for the ransomware. So it's basically the same techniques. And if we also take a step back to the Triton and Indestroyer and compare it with the Fin6, which is a financial crime threat actor or a group, we can see that we can see the same tools are basically being used across the same malwares, Triton and Indestroyer, which are very specific OT malwares, and the Fin6, which is a financial industry crime group. So we're seeing mimikatz across, we're seeing Grab.exe, NetExec, the other, again, even the malware, the Meterpreter, ComVPN. So in a nutshell, the same TTPs for targeting IT are used to target OT. We have seen that in Triton, we have seen that in Indestroyer, and again, we are seeing it in Colonial pipeline and DarkSide, the most recent attack. And this is actually in line with what we're calling it the theory of 99, where almost all activity happens basically in Windows and Linux systems. This theory is available on one of our blogs online, on our website. If you need more details about it, you can read. But in a nutshell, what this theory says, basically 99% of compromised systems will actually be computer and workstations. Malware will be actually designed for computer workstations and IT infrastructure in OT environments. 99 of intrusion dwell time basically happens in commercial off-the-shelf computer equipment before going down to Purdue level 0 and 1 devices are actually impacted. If you need more details about this, definitely you can go to the website and read the entire blog about how the theory of 99 impact OT environments. Finally, before moving to the questions, just the key takeaways to keep in our mind. The post-compromise approach, we have to keep in our mind how ransomware has evolved from the post-compromise approach versus the traditional shotgun approach, resulting in targeting the CNI crown jewels, which are basically, of course, the OT production. That's your critical stuff. That's your most critical asset that you need to protect. In addition to that, the recent trend is actually in line with the existing trend of using TTPs used to target IT for targeting OT and the theory of 99. They are the same TTPs that used to target IT are now being targeting OT environments. In addition to that, on the last step, make sure to protect your IT because this is the key to your OT environment. Protect your perimeter because this is how attackers actually jump from IT to OT. Protect your computer assets and computer IT technology in your OT. Encrypt and backup. We cannot emphasize enough on the backup, especially with the case of ransomware. That's your rescuer because you don't wanna be in a situation where a ransomware happens, you ask about the backup, and your response will be, it ran somewhere. Thank you so much. I think I have some questions.
Yes, we have one question from Mark Anthony. Some legacy systems don't allow agent installation of monitoring agents. Is network monitoring enough? And what alternatives can be used to cover these systems from a ransomware perspective?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So yeah, with legacy systems, absolutely. It can be really hard to install endpoint protection. However, we are seeing more and more endpoint, or I would say OT systems with the capability to support endpoint installation of agents. The industry is maturing and advancing to that state. However, there will be definitely some legacy systems where that won't be possible. That's why we emphasize on the importance of segmenting the network, segmenting the environment into zones, segments, conclaves, so that if an attacker reaches an environment, does not jump to another segment of the environment easily. And that's where actually you put in the middle network monitoring, so that anything that happens between the assets across the network, you can able to capture that. You are able to see what are the malicious activities going at the network level, because a malware that is only on a single asset almost is harmless. It's really the malware will start causing damage when it starts communicating with either the internet, with the C2 center, or with some other assets to spread from one to another. So yeah, it could be hard to install endpoint protection all agents. However, network protection and network monitoring can provide some level of protection, especially that most malware activity will happen, will require some network activity that you can capture by network monitoring.
Wonderful, wonderful, Mark. Thank you so much. Scary perspective, but I mean, if you take the right precautions, I think businesses can avert this. Thank you so much for that presentation, Muat.
One more question. Sorry to cut you off. We can just take that one quick question and then we can.
Oh, yes, I didn't notice that. Sorry about that. We've got another question, Muat, from Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, the quick one. What is the level of integration between the security system and the OEMs? What kind of integration, and can it be independent approach without involving ICSS OEM? Yeah, that's a good one also. The general recommendation in the industry is actually to always work hand in hand with OEMs. I know in some instances it might seem like you are locked with the OEM. That's not something we want to do, and that something should be protected by the supply chain agreements that should allow at the selection time, at the supplier selection time, protect the end user right to have variety of cybersecurity protection mechanisms, vendor solutions, software. However, it is still recommended in the industry till today to work hand in hand with the OEMs, because these are their systems, they know them the best, and it's important to integrate with them and liaise with them.
I think
And if
there's a follow-up.
If there are any more questions, I can actually have a separate.
Muat, I think he's got a follow-up question to that. It's how about the infrastructure footprint?
How about the infrastructure footprint? I don't think I'm getting it. Getting the question
it's the same.
right.
It's the same question. It's a follow-up to the first question about what is the level of integration between the security system. Can it be independent? Can it be an independent approach without involving ICSS and OEMs?
Yeah. So basically, again, the importance of OEMs, they have to be involved. Most of your SLAs are actually signed with OEMs. Whenever there is a ransomware, the recovery actually will definitely involve the OEMs, because this would require massive deployment of engineering program, engineering logic, the backups that you have in place. You might need a workforce. So OEMs is always a good partner actually to work with in case for cybersecurity and OT environments.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Back to you. And if there are any more questions, I'm happy to answer them on the side. I do not take more time than we initially planned.
Thank you. Thank you, Muat. So next up, we have the importance of network segmentation in the age of ransomware. This presentation is by Robin Berthier, who's the CEO of Network Perception. Over to you, Robin. If you can put on your screen. Yes. Okay, wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Karthik, and welcome everyone. I trust that you can see my video and the slides. So we are a great introduction and description of the problem by Muate on the ransomware, and I'll offer a complementary aspect to this problem by focusing on the solution and what type of approach we can take to either prevent or limit the impact of ransomware in industrial systems, and particularly focusing on network segmentation. And I want to actually show a case study with a real network where we can see how that can be applied. So my name is Robin Berthier. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Network Perception. I started my career as a researcher at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and studying network security, first on the intrusion detection side, and then more on the firewall analysis and connectivity path to understand how architecture and security policies could be used to proactively reduce the impact of cyber attacks. At Network Perception, we design and develop solutions for network visibility, verification of compliance and cybersecurity, as well as enabling our customers to continuously monitor their complex network environment, as well as being able to respond faster when an incident happens. So I'll go through a short primer on ransomware. I won't spend too much time there because Muat really did a great job presenting the threat, especially for industrial systems. I want them to focus on the best practices and key recommendation for the specific case of ransomware. And then I want to show a case study with this concept of network segmentation. So if you haven't seen this type of screen on your computer, then great. But that may happen in the next few years. The threat will just keep increasing. So when a ransomware attacks, they will encrypt all the data on a workstation or on a server, and then show a pop-up window like this one, or a background screen where you have a timeline to pay the price in order to get a decryption key. And if you don't have, as Matt was saying, if you don't have a strong working backup system, then your only solution to recover the data maybe to pay the ransom. And that's really a dilemma for management teams at organizations. It's whether to pay or to try to recover and restore operation themselves. And even if you pay, then you need to trust that the attackers will keep their word and will give you actually access to the data, because that's not always the case. So we've seen a really dramatic rise in number of attacks related to ransomware, more than 350% in the past 3 years. The amount of the ransoms have increased, as was shown in the last presentation. The fact that they're targeting high value target, they can also increase the amount of payments requested. And then interestingly, healthcare becomes, it's still the primary target for ransomware groups this year so far, but we've seen like a really rapid rise in the energy sector. Like it's a close number 2 there, with a lot of attacks really targeting those either electric utilities or oil and gas. On average, there's a 21-day downtime when a ransomware occurs, and last year there was a total of $350 million paid to ransomware groups, and we've seen that increase in the amount of the payment, where we're like in the 5 digits now, in the 6 digits, and the average may go above $1 million in the next couple of years. So the attack patterns for ransomware has been evolving as well, and so we're seeing now like the attackers are going deeper into systems. That's the opposite to the gunshot approach that Matt was describing, where they want to really take the time for strong reconnaissance, removing existing backups, making sure they not only compromise one network, but go into as many networks as they can. And so the pattern will be starting from an initial compromise with different techniques, such as a phishing attack, vulnerability in a server exposed publicly to the internet, some remote desktop protocol that have been accessible with weak credentials, or other types of client-side attacks. And then from that initial compromise, escalating the privileges to be able to target domain admin, like an Active Directory on LDAP, in order to be able to use additional credentials to expand the scope of the attack. And then from there, doing what's called lateral movement, which means to move from one network to the next in order to compromise additional systems. Once the systems have been compromised, there is a step of encrypting the data, as well as nowadays we're seeing more and more exfiltration of data. So it's not only a ransom for you to recover your data, but also to prevent attackers from publicly disclosing that data to competitors, or to the authority, or just to the public. So in terms of best practice, so what can we do as organizations, especially in the energy sector, to reduce or eliminate the risk of ransomware? And so I divided best practices in their 3 categories, starting with endpoints on the left. Step 1 is really to have endpoint security, which means either an antivirus or some monitoring of systems into workstations and servers. Second, to have a strong vulnerability management and patching campaign program so that you can keep applications and operating systems as up to date as possible, which is not always straightforward, especially in the industrial side of things with legacy systems or the fact that patching can disrupt operation. And that's where we need to also have defense in depth, and that's what I'll show in the next few slides. And then third, on the endpoint security side, to create a list of authorized applications. That way you can prevent the installation of any unknown application that could carry some malware. That's specifically important nowadays, that we can bring our own devices into networks, and we want to have tight control over which executables are run into the organization network. Second, on the user and data, a strong recommendation to prefer standard user accounts as opposed to administrator accounts, because that's those admin accounts, if they're not necessarily have been used to escalate those attacks. And then really an emphasis on being able to train users often. We saw in the initial compromise the risk of like phishing attack, for example. So really training employees to not click on links from in emails, to always verify the sender, and to be careful of attachments. Second, to implement and test a strong data backup and restoration system. And then third, to enforce two-factor authentication across the board. We've seen, again, in this propagation of ransomware, and that was the case in Colonial, the lack of two-factor authentication allows attackers to either brute force or to leverage compromised credentials from another resource, another website, to be able to get a footprint inside the organization. And so if you have 2FA, then that's where you can, or multi-factor authentication, that's when you can prevent the abuse of known credentials to penetrate further. And then third, on the networking side, which is the focus of this presentation, really working to have strong network segmentation, which means dividing your organization network into zones and controlling the data flows and knowing which connectivity is allowed among zones, so that if something happens, like if you have one workstation or a group of workstations compromised into one zone, then you have confidence that the attack will remain there and won't propagate into other zones. So you want to be able to limit and even block this opportunity for lateral movement. Second, to control and monitor your firewall and router configuration. And that's that means to have established a baseline of your security policies, your rule sets. And then once you have the baseline defined, to be able to approve every change being brought into those network devices. What you don't want there is to have someone adding an ACL or a rule to enable access, and then you don't know about it, and then you have a new vulnerability or a new gap in your access policy. And then third, complementary to the review of your network architecture and the review of your firewall and router configuration, be able to monitor and inspect network traffic, especially for the traffic that goes from one zone to the next. You want to deploy intrusion detection systems or even intrusion prevention systems in order to block traffic, and also having visibility on that data flows. So focusing on network segmentation, we can divide traditional network into like 3 high-level zones. We have the outside world, the internet. We have the IT or corporate network. And then on the right, we have this industrial system or OT network. And the pattern that we've seen was starting from an initial compromise into the IT environment, then that opportunity for lateral movement to navigate from one network to the next, and then putting the operation at risk. And even if the data is being the target of ransomware, the fact that our production relies on data to be able to keep running, that puts our ability to keep running our business at risk. So really, network segmentation is a technique to limit the scope of ransomware by preventing malware from propagating from one target network to another target network. And that's especially important in the context of industrial systems. If we look at different ways that attackers have been leveraging their vulnerabilities or the existing systems to go from one network to the next, we're seeing a variety of techniques. So remote desktop is one of them, to be able to leverage credentials from the Active Directory and then use remote desktop to go into another network, another workstation. I also want to highlight some additional techniques. So if you have, for example, Microsoft SQL databases that have replication links, like you have a database in your OT environment and then a replica into your IT for backup, then that link could be leveraged to go from IT to OT on port TCP 1433. Same thing if you use Active Directory and you have a replica of your directories or of users between the OT and IT, you have a product to centralize the management of your identity and user groups into a single server with multiple satellites servers in which users can be authenticated. Then that's now a vulnerability because the attackers can leverage those Active Directory replicas to, again, go from one network to another. And then we've seen in different attacks also leveraging the Microsoft SCCM, so the System Center Configuration Manager, to be able to control workstations and endpoints with a central policy. We've seen that system being leveraged to, again, do lateral movement. And then finally, the Windows Update Services, where you have an ability to have a local Windows Update server inside your network to be able to patch your workstations. That also can be leveraged for lateral movement because of the replicas between those different WSUS servers. Then you can have an attacker going from one to the next. So let's look at a real network there where we have this map. We have two firewalls. We have our outside internet network on the left, our IT environment in the middle, a DMZ between IT and OT, and then the industrial system on the right. And so I will switch actually to the dynamic map of this environment right there. And I want to show you how an attack can leverage even a strong access policy to go from the initial compromise into the industrial systems. So we have the internet on the left. We can imagine a workstation there in this corporate network. And if we look at the traffic allowed into or outside of this workstation, then we could, we see that we have no traffic possible, which means that there's a strong access policy there into the firewall. So that means this client can access the internet, but no one on the internet can get and reach the workstation. But thanks to attacks such as phishing, if someone sends an email to the user using that workstation and they click on an attachment, then that can become the initial compromise vector. Once this is compromised, then the malware can propagate to the same broadcast domain, so meaning to connect using Samba or using remote desktop into the other workstation into that IT network. And we see here that we have an Active Directory that's used for authentication for this corporate network. And if we look at the connectivity into this Active Directory, we see that we have our replica on port 8531 that allows traffic from an Active Directory inside the OT network, crossing the two firewalls and then reaching the Active Directory into the IT network. And that's a vector of attack for that lateral movement. So this access policy, even if we have a rule set preventing direct access from IT into OT, the fact that we have this replica compromising this AD server in the IT allows the malware to then infect the AD server into the OT. And once that's infected, then workstation in the same broadcast domain into the industrial system can be compromised as well. So what's the solution? Well, first, step one is to know those data flows, is to be aware of which communications are allowed between your environment. And my recommendation to do that is to build what's called a connectivity matrix. So you want for each one of your firewall to have a table like this one, where for every pair of interface, you can see exactly which traffic is allowed from one segment to another. And that's really your dashboard to make sure that you have network segmentation correctly enforced. And then comparing from that connectivity matrix, the typical attack vectors for lateral movements. So we looked at port 8531. So you want to pay attention to those Microsoft services, like we have TCP/445 for SMB, we have remote desktop 3389, and then we have this replication port 8531. So if you see those and you see traffic allowed from OT into IT or vice versa, that's where you want to use a DMZ, and that's where you want to have a jump host that really separate those two zones. And you want to, even at the cost of usability, really maybe have two distinct environments for your Active Directory and not having those replication continuously going on. And then the DMZ can also help you to enforce that multi-factor authentication, because you can have a jump host in which you force every user to use 2FA. And that way you know that every data flow that goes from IT into OT will have to stop through the jump host. There will be another layer of protection with the other authentication to be able to access your most critical systems, the crown jewels into the industrial network. So looking at this map again, so what we can do is show what's called a stepping stone view. And so the stepping stone will let you know for a given target which node into your map into your network allow direct access. So those two nodes in red, which are the jump hosts, they have direct connectivity from DMZ into OT, and then the ones in orange will be one stepping stone away. So that's a correctly defined network here, where we have this two-step connectivity, where if something gets compromised on the IT side, they would also have to compromise the jump host and then break your multi-factor authentication in order to get access to OT. So as a summary, really step one, knowing that you have correct segmentation enforced, and that means to build this connectivity metrics for your firewall. And then step two, going a step further with this type of stepping stone attack in which you can build attack graphs. So in conclusion, really three steps approach. Number one, adopting a risk management framework. NIST just published a framework profile specifically for ransomware. It's in a draft. It was published just a few weeks ago. I invite everyone to take a look at the document, because they have a good mapping of controls you can put in place. Step two, really building that connectivity metrics, especially for the critical firewall into your industrial system. So verifying your network segmentation and then reviewing data flows linked to Microsoft services like Active Directory, Windows Update, Remote Desktop. And then once you have that those two steps done, like really looking longer term by building your baseline and then identifying which gaps you have between where you are today and what you want to be tomorrow in terms of strong ransomware protection plan, a mitigation plan, and an incident response plan. So I'll be glad to answer questions you may have, and you can also reach out to me to continue conversation. I put my email address there, and we can also be contacted through LinkedIn or Twitter.
Thank you, Robin. We've got one question which we can quickly take before we move on. We've got this question from Abdullah Al Najim. can the ransomware malware file mutate itself and hide itself in the data center for many months or years before encrypting the victim's digital assets? If so, how to detect such complex evasion techniques?
Yeah, great question. The short answer is yes. We've seen new capabilities from malware to disguise themselves and to hide from traditional antiviruses or intrusion detection systems. And the solution here is twofold. First, to really invest in that defense in depth concept that I mentioned, which means to have multiple layers of protection, which means if one of them fails, then you have additional techniques. So if your endpoint security doesn't work because the malware is mutating, then you have network segmentation to prevent further propagation. And then the second aspect is to also invest in what's called behavioral intrusion detection. For example, there are techniques now by endpoint security vendors to add what's called a canary file into your operating system. So you can have a set of dummy files into folder. Those are hidden files, and they're monitored by the endpoint security client. And as soon as a process starts to encrypt those canary files, they trigger an alarm, and then the process is being shut down. So even if the process is not detectable by the traditional signature-based antiviruses, then the fact that it starts encrypting a file that it shouldn't will trigger an alarm and will allow you to detect them.
Thank you, Robin. I think that's all for the questions. Next up, we've got our panel discussion focusing on cyber resilience within the energy sector. It's moderated by Mr. Hani Bani Amir, who's the head for cybersecurity operations from one of GCC's leading oil companies. Hi, Hani, over to you.
Hi, Karthik. Good evening. How are you?
Good, Hani.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
And welcome to our Cyber Warrior panel discussion for this evening. Today, we'll be addressing the topic of the cybersecurity resilience in energy and critical infrastructure sector. Cyber resiliency is defined as the ability of organizations.
Sorry, Hani, I think somebody's got another device that they're using. If they can mute that. I think that's the issue because there are two devices. That's why the echo.
It's definitely not me, not from my side.
Or if I could ask the panelists to mute their mics till they're called upon, that would be helpful.
Okay.
You can go ahead now.
Yes. Cybersecurity resiliency is defined as the ability of an organization to enable the business acceleration by being prepared for responding to and recovering from cyber threats. A cyber resilient organization can adapt to known and unknown crises, threats, adversaries, and challenges. The ultimate goal of cyber resiliency is to help organizations to thrive in the face of adverse conditions like crisis, pandemics, financial variations, and so. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our panelists. And in case if you have any question, please feel free to write it in the chat box. I will leave the floor now for our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. Please, we'll start with Mr. Muhammad. Hello.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here in the panel. I'm really honored and thrilled to be sharing my thoughts and ideas about the digital transformation and the cybersecurity that's related to digital transformation. To brief you about myself, I started my professional career in 2001, but I started my cybersecurity professional career in 2013. I have worked in multiple positions like network administrator, like information security analyst, And now I'm holding the cybersecurity division or section head in Advanced Petrochemical. I've worked in Aramco, SABIC, some of the big companies here in Saudi Arabia. And I'm looking forward to actually answering questions and sharing my ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Over to you, Ali.
Yes, good afternoon to all the buddies. I'm a pleasure to be with these shiny faces from Saudi Arabia, the pioneers in cybersecurity. Basically, my name is Ali Abdullah Sadadi. I'm the head of IT, National Oil and Gas Authority. I'm running now 17 years in IT and cybersecurity and digital transformation. The focus more is basically on the digital transformation, but I have a slightly things with the cybersecurity. A pleasure again to see these shiny faces and to be engaged on board with this panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Ali. Robin, please.
Yep, so my name is Robin Betier. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Network Perception. I've been working in the field of cybersecurity for the past 16 years, really focusing on networks. I built some open source technology around intrusion detection for smart meters, around visualization for net flow data and network traffic. And now I'm focusing on with my team on really building and designing the next gen network visualization and risk assessment platforms.
Thank you, Robin. Ibrahim?
Greeting, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ibrahim Tohari, a cybersecurity professional and a team lead at Saudi Aramco. I have over 15 years of experience in network operations and design, network security, endpoint security, and security operation leadership. I hold a master's degree in information security and currently leading a team of highly skilled professionals to develop cybersecurity monitoring and automation solutions that help increase the SOC's ability to respond to threats. I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this honor to be with these esteemed colleagues and attendants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. I'm really pleased, and it's really a pleasure for me to have you all in our panel discussion today. I'll start my first question with Mr. Ibrahim. Can you please tell us why cybersecurity is crucial to deliver a successful digital transformation?
Thank you, Hani. So the short answer will be sustainability and evolution, but I'll elaborate more as organizations pursue digital transformation to increase their agility, optimize operation, or increase their innovative edge. And additional specific reason will help the organization decide how to approach cybersecurity. Digital transformation initiatives should view cybersecurity as a fundamental requirement, not as an additional item on the proverbial list. Unfortunately, many organizations do not involve their cybersecurity teams at the beginning of the process. In fact, they are often called upon late. And digital transformation is challenging to IT professionals as well as cybersecurity professionals in terms of technology, processes, skills, and being tasked with protecting such an innovation and technology is difficult and requires a lot of improvements, a lot of focus on the risks, controls, and yet to be known vulnerabilities, adversarial capabilities, and it involves prioritizing the most critical processes and assets within the organization, as well as identifying and protecting potential sources of vulnerabilities and attacks. And in recent years, there is a more need for digital transformation that has been driven by the COVID-19 pandemic. Many organizations came to the realization that achieving this transformation is great, but sustaining it is of equal importance. And cybersecurity is one of the means needed to sustain and evolve the organization's digital transformation journey, if I may say. Gartner in 2016 has predicted that around 2020, about a third of the digital business will suffer major service failures. It is granted that some of these failures might be for technical reasons, but we have seen that cyber attacks are becoming a very prevalent cause of service failures. And recent examples of the cyber attacks on health, education, government, utilities, technology, and industrial organizations are witnessed over the past few years, even few months. And to end my answer here is cybersecurity after the fact is not an easy fix to potential cyber attacks. It requires early adoption as part of the overall strategy for digital transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Yes, I cannot agree more on the statement said that usually we are involved very late in the business change process, not only digital transformation, but any change in the systems. Most of the times, cybersecurity team are coming very late to the picture, and unfortunately are viewed as showstoppers. We have been viewed as putting the sticks in the wheels for the development and for the innovation. And I believe we as cyber practitioners and security professionals, we should change that perception from being showstoppers to a security and secure business enablers. And I believe this is a duty for each and every cyber warrior. Don't you agree with me? Okay, I'll take my next question to Mr. Muhammad. And we'll ask about how does he view the evolution of the industrial cybersecurity threat? What is being seen in today's real ground implementation?
Wow, this is a big one actually, because I have worked in the industrial cybersecurity. I have seen a lot of mind-boggling things, to be honest. We actually all have seen, I think we all have seen the attacks against the the American pipeline, and then the JBS meat processing company, and then I think it was like today or yesterday the Southwest Airlines in America. So those attacks are becoming more and more prominent and more sophisticated, if I may say. The good thing is, I have seen a lot of people shedding more light on industrial cybersecurity. Because in the past, people usually say, if it's not broken, why fix it? And they have this mentality of saying, okay, no, this is not going to happen to me. This is not going to happen to me. We can, track back all the way to the Stuxnet up to right now, and we can see the amount of attacks that are evolving and actually happening right now. So it is actually refreshing to see that people are actually monitoring the market and seeing that the attacks are increasing. And basically, not a lot of them. But some of the organizations have similar products that are, they're using similar products because in the industrial networks usually have some big companies, and most of the organizations actually go to those I'm gonna say technology makers, okay, to build their industrial network, which is really, really good. Another thing that I'm actually optimistic to see, and I'm happy to see, is the turn from the conditional or the traditional cybersecurity, like in normal networks and IT networks. And people are actually drifting and going to the industrial network cybersecurity, which is really, really good to see.
Yes. Thank you very much, Muhammad, and thank you for the answer. I completely agree with you. Now, this takes me to the next question to Ali. How is cyber resilience any different from the traditional cybersecurity works being done today? Why professionals are focusing more now on resiliency rather than on old static cybersecurity?
Yes, thanks a lot. Looking for the cyber resilience, basically. Cyber resilience today is not a sort of single procedure or a policy that you defense your environment and to respond to your incidents there. It's a whole program, it's a whole strategy there to your organization, looking for the two different manners from the preventive and the offensive way itself. So people, they have to think about the cyber resilience in a bigger image rather than to focus it only for the incident response manner itself. And looking for the cyber resilience, basically it's based on 3 pillars there. You are talking about the technology there, the people and the processes. The focus more about how you basically run these 3 elements, these 3 pillars in your organization. And to start this, you have to have a sort of strategy there. How you maintain these kind of technologies, what kind of processes you need basically to run it in your organization in order to protect your informations, your data there, your environment, your infrastructure there. And the people as well, because you know that today, nowadays, we have a lack of expertise there in a cybersecurity from a different perspective there. So people or the organization, they need more to focus on the training part and to leverage the level of education and expertise in their people as well. So as I told that, it's a whole journey there. You should start from strategy to understand what the organization is required basically. And after that, you move to design the proper implementation ways of leveraging that people expertise level, looking for the required processes and procedures to maintain the information and cybersecurity manner in your organization, and use the proper technology basically for your organization. And to think that these kind of things, it needs a continual improvement, that you have to think and to see what's the opportunities, what's the threats there outside the organization in order to protect your environment.
Thank you very much, Ali. Yes, you're definitely right. And you touched on two key and crucial points for the cybersecurity, which is the lack of expertise and resources and selecting the right technologies. Those are really pain points in the industry that should be addressed properly in order to build proper resilient network and resilient infrastructure. Thank you very much, Ali. Hello?
Yes, there is no voice there.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I don't know, I was speaking, it was muted. So I'm really sorry. What I was trying to say that really the points that you touched, Ali, about the lack of resources and expertise in the area of cybersecurity shall be addressed, and selecting the appropriate and right technology is also a big challenge that should be tackled with care in order to address the resiliency in the infrastructures. I definitely agree with you, Ali. Thank you very much. My next point will be to Robin. Robin, why cybersecurity visibility is still a core challenge for critical infrastructures today?
Thanks, Hani, and thanks everyone for participating. I think the challenge of visibility has multiple factors. Number one, our dependency on cyber system keeps increasing. Just 10, 15 years ago, our industrial system could run into an analog mode where we didn't rely so much on digital technologies. Nowadays, that's becoming impossible. So we have that dependency which keeps growing, and with that growth, we're seeing more complexity into our networking and computer technologies. Also, we have a greater variety of technology. We adopt cloud solutions, we have industrial IoT. So all those different pieces and that complexity is putting pressure on our ability to visualize and get stronger understanding of how things are connected and how things are deployed. The second factor is, I think an acceleration of changes. We're seeing just the amount of new items or new assets or new technology that we're bringing to networks just going faster, and that's also a challenge for visibility, because you need to keep up with the pace and you need to move away from the traditional snapshot review of your environment to a much more continuous monitoring of your infrastructure. And then third factor would be on the cybersecurity technology side, because I think we have an issue today where there's a lot of visibility solutions. There's a lot of vendors, cybersecurity vendors working on visualization, but they're working with their view of the world, and so they have a really narrow slice of the comprehensive visualization that we need. And I think it's important to realize that we're still at the beginning of a journey there where we need more integration, better, more comprehensive view of not only the endpoint security, the network architecture, the network traffic, so that we can have this comprehensive understanding of things and not just having to move from one platform to another to get a slice of that visibility.
Thank you very much, Robin. Appreciate your answer. I'll take my next question to Ibrahim again. What solutions do you think could be brought to stand that would really make the entire ecosystem more secure?
Well, there are technical and non-technical aspects of this answer. And I think my colleague Ali has touched on these briefly in his answer to the previous question. And with regard to the non-technical aspects, investment in the organization's human capital and supply chain can help elevate the organization's cybersecurity maturity, business continuity and resilience. Also, building and evolving the cybersecurity program of the organization will help focus the organization's effort and serve to address new challenges, threats, and overall risk outlook, since the digital transformation is upon everyone now. And looking at organizations' policies, assets, and threats, and threat intelligence feed as well, would increase the organization's preparedness and proactivity to detect and respond to threats. And with respect to the technical solutions, there is an overwhelming abundance of solutions and technologies. The main challenge is creating an IT and cybersecurity defensible architecture that takes cybersecurity into consideration and would eventually help the cybersecurity teams do their tasks effectively. I think my colleague Robin here mentioned a lot and the details about the network segmentation, which is part of the defensible cybersecurity architecture. And I really enjoyed it very much. Furthermore, looking at the and evaluating different technologies can help organizations stay up to date with advances in detective and preventive controls. Personally, I would recommend focusing on detection to bridge potential gaps in the organization's detective controls, while working and looking at opportunities to automate detection, response, and other security processes as much as possible. This will help organizations deal with the shortage in human capital, skills, and minimize errors, and help free security analysts to do more valuable activities such as hunting for threats, identifying areas of improvement, conduct assessments, benchmarks that help them measure the overall effectiveness of the cybersecurity program. And at the end of the day, organizations are different despite apparent similarities. Each organization should exert the most efforts to build and an understanding where technical leadership can work and collaborate to enable a sustainable business.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Appreciate your elaboration and answer. My next question will be to Muhammad. What are some of the positives that you see in the industry that show the movement towards better securing OT infrastructure?
Yeah, I'm actually a big believer of building people before building systems. What I'm seeing right now is the amount of training that we are giving to the talents that are out there that are trying to break into the industrial cybersecurity right now. A lot of focus from the government, from the companies themselves, to actually train people and build them, let me say, the correct talent to take responsibility of actually securing the industrial networks. The second thing is the close monitoring of the government for the companies that does not give a chance for the companies to actually become behind in terms of cybersecurity. Well, while they're wanting them to actually be leaders in securing their networks. So in giving out a lot of rules and regulations and closely monitoring compliance with that. I'm pretty sure a lot of the guys, a lot of my friends, especially the ones in Saudi Arabia, have been in direct contact with the NCA, with the National Cybersecurity Association, asking them and tracking their compliance to the rules and regulations according to the best international cybersecurity controls there are, which is really also good to know. They're not leaving anything to chance. They're actually taking leaps instead of footsteps into securing our industry, which is really, really good and very, very positive to see.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for your answer. And I'm really glad to hear that those major steps and the care is being taken and nothing is left to the chance. My next question will be to Ali. What solution you think could be brought to stand up that would really secure the entire ecosystem more efficiently, more resiliently, that would give more visibility?
Yes. Basically, there is no single solution it can be relied on to have a look to that big exposure there in a cybersecurity. Starting from the vulnerability assessment, the penetration testing, such kind of controls. If you are looking, for example, for the NIST controls there, the CIS controls as well, the 20 controls. Let us talk regarding the CIS 20 controls. We have 20 controls there for the cybersecurity. Do you think that one solution it can handle all of the aspects there in these kind of controls there, from data classification, protecting the endpoint protection there for the host itself, protecting and monitoring your entire organization? So there is no such kind of a solution can be relied on a cybersecurity itself. It depends on the purpose of that solution and which type of control basically you want to have to control it there in your organization.
Absolutely, you're right. There is definitely no one solution or one silver bullet that would solve the cybersecurity problem. It's a combination of people, process, technologies, and adopting the right technologies in order to take it to the next step. Thank you very much, Ali. And my next question is to Robin. And to be honest, it's more than one question because it's might having two sections of it. The question would be, what do you think would be the major change for the national critical infrastructure and the cybersecurity for the coming years? And what would be the simple steps to start that transformation for cybersecurity?
Great, thank you, Hani, for the question. So, I think in the next few years, this theme of cyber resiliency will just continue to grow in importance. I think Ibrahim was mentioning that elevation of the message to no longer think into kind of piecemeal solutions, but more comprehensive strategy. I think that will, at the leadership, at the board level of organization, the mentioning resiliency and having a good plan for being able to address the threats and keep the business running despite being under threat will be just growing in importance. The second aspect, I think that will happen in the next few years will be, the rise of more comprehensive technology and being able to integrate better different solutions so that we can have that visibility. We can have, we don't rely on a single vendor, but we have an ecosystem of multiple solutions And actually, I'm seeing a question regarding the risk of actually having vendors being attack vectors themselves, and we've seen that in the SolarWinds case. And so in the next few years, I think we'll have organizations dividing vendors into the ones helping on the control side, the ones helping on the monitoring side, and not putting all your eggs in the same basket. Like, it will become just best practice to have replication of duties and complementary solution, so that if one of your vendors becoming compromised, then you won't be completely exposed. And then to the second part of your question regarding simple steps, really adopting a risk assessment framework is step number one. Like, if you don't have a best practice framework, it can be from NIST, from IEC, from a regulatory body, but knowing and having this comprehensive strategy, at least to drive and direct your investments, is number one step.
Thank you very much, Robin. Now I'll move to a question that I would like to take all the panelists' opinion in, because maybe this will shape our industry in the coming period. What would be the shortcomings of cybersecurity in digital transformation and organizational cyber resiliency? So I'll leave for any of the panelists to start answering the question. Please, anyone can take the question, and then we'll go with the rest of the panelists.
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. What are the shortcomings of the cybersecurity in the area or the arena of digital transformation and the building organizational resiliency in the coming future? What should we tackle in priorities from cybersecurity aspects as cyber professionals to build the future?
Okay, can I take that one first? Start with it.
Please, Mohammed.
Yes, Mr. Hani. So actually, I read like a line that was mentioned by Ernst & Young. They were saying we should bake cybersecurity into digital transformation. That means digital transformation starts with cybersecurity and ends with cybersecurity. The thing is, people have been advocating for digital transformation since 2015, 2016. But they're taking, little steps into digital transformation. And then in 2019 came COVID that panicked everyone into digital transformation because, they want people to actually interact. They want employees to interact. They want the organizations want to interact with their customers and improve the customer and employee experience. The thing is that led to people rushing into digital transformation and skipping the cybersecurity role. The issue is, cybersecurity and digital transformation needs a specific set of tools, specific set of knowledge, and skill base and stuff like that. So we need to take our time, like from the beginning of, planning for digital transformation. It's not too late, although, like for organizations that are actually, they're like midway into digital transformation. The thing is, they need to understand, like what procedures they embedded, or, for example, what technologies, whether it is the AI, machine learning, taking their applications to the cloud, no matter what it is, it's not too late. Let's begin to actually reflect on cybersecurity. And one more thing, instead of being known as the no department, because that's what everybody is, calls us. Let's begin to ask the question: what can we do? How can we help to make this happen?
Yes, thank you very much. And I believe things should start going to the basics. Process. Most of the people, they just forget about starting with the right process in place. In order to build the resiliency, first of all, you need to have the right processes in place built in order to follow by the talented people to build the secure solutions. Anybody else would like to add anything? Ali, Ibrahim, Robin?
Yes, if you allow me. Again, if you are looking about the digital transformation, we are talking about the three main pillars there in the digital transformation, which is the IT, OT, and the communication network, which is basically the media of exchanging and sending and receiving this kind of data. And the hub of the digital transformation basically is information and data. Looking back to the cybersecurity and information security, talking about protecting the confidentiality and integrity and availability of this data, which is basically the ultimate goal of the cybersecurity. So again, we are talking about data, protecting data, maintaining the data itself. So digital transformation, we have to consider the cybersecurity from end to end, not only from, while you are implementing that such kind of initiative there in a digital transformation, since you are talking about your data and your information is there in your organization.
Thank you very much, Ali. You touched a very critical point as well, which is protecting our crown jewels. What we wanted to protect exactly, and building the protections around that piece of data, that piece of crown jewel, that piece of process, or that piece of whatever data or physical asset we have. I completely agree with you. Ibrahim, Robin, any thoughts?
Well, I cannot add more to the answers of the two gentlemen here. I think they covered it very well, but I want to touch on a few points which are looking at the perception of cybersecurity. IT professionals need to be able to understand cybersecurity and what it does and how important it is. And cybersecurity professionals need to understand that business need to evolve and digital transformation is coming. There is no deniability. And COVID-19 had just kicked it in higher gear, to say. And that will reflect on how we do things from now on. Some of the areas is to look at our readiness as cybersecurity professionals in terms of technical capabilities, skills, knowledge, and amount of collaboration that we have with our colleagues in IT and our colleagues also in the business. Also look at the assets that will be impacted by this digital transformation. Are they computing? Are they cloud? Are they network? Now with the increase in reliance on cloud and remote services, where do we put the demarcation of our perimeter? All this need to be considered and looked at as part of the preparedness and readiness for this transformation, and look at the people and technologies from the perspective of what needs to be done as an organization. This also needs to be considered in the overall strategy. The strategy is not about just get it done. I want this, get it done. It needs to communicate. It needs communication. It needs collaboration. It needs working hand in hand between IT, business, and cybersecurity to ensure that transformation is a success, not another incident or problem that might affect the business and put them back instead of moving them forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Appreciate your answer. Robin, over to you. Any insights?
Thanks. Yeah, I think the point that Ibrahim made is extremely important, and it goes in the direction of being able to break silos, like to be able to work and collaborate across multiple teams who have different priorities and different ways to see the business. And I think that on the side of cybersecurity and for vendors, it's really a challenge that we have to address to be able to develop and design user interfaces, reports, dashboards that are useful for not only technical folks, but also the non-technical on the business side. And I think that's a sign of maturity. Related to that development of a common language among multiple teams, I think standards have a big role to play. Just to use the challenge of supply chain as an example, we're seeing now like a software bill of material standard being developed. We're seeing labels system to be able to rank different vendors according to the best practices they follow to develop their software. So in the next few years, for us on the cybersecurity side, it will be important to take those questions extremely seriously and develop the right solutions.
Thank you very much, Robin. I appreciate your answer as well. Now I'll leave the floor for the last takeaway message. If somebody would like just to share last thought before we wrap up.
We've got a question, Hani. We've got one question.
I'm really sorry. Can you share it, please?
Abdullah Al Najim. I think anybody can take this. Customers usually rely completely on their cybersecurity rely completely on their cybersecurity vendors. But what if that vendor has malicious employees? How do we protect ourselves from such an unexpected cyber attack? The answer should be interesting for this.
Well, I'll volunteer to answer this, although Robin has made great effort in answering it previously. At the end of the day, the vendor is a business. And if they have insiders, other businesses might have insiders as well. So focusing on your supply chain is important, as well as focusing on your insider threat will help you mitigate many of the risks that are included in the supply chain. There is big movement now to secure the supply chain. Organizations are putting many requirements on vendors, and there are a lot of things that organizations can do. Defense in depth is a very big point here. Zero trust is another area where things can be controlled. And as Robin said, the focus on diversifying your controls instead of putting all your controls from a single vendor. You can look at multiple vendors who do things differently and might help you discover such threats. It is difficult at the end of the day. It is as difficult as insider threat, and organizations need to put more efforts in trying to mitigate this. There is no 100% cure for this, but professionals and organizations have to try their best in reducing the risk of such threat. Thank you.
Does anybody else have another perspective to add or something else they want to add to that?
Just quickly, I think it's really complex challenge because vendors have vendors too, and there's no software that's completely standalone. So they all depend on either open source libraries or other technologies. So it's the supply chain challenge is really a great challenge, and we are at the beginning of some interesting solutions being developed. But it's complex, and we need the point of views of many different parties to solve it.
Anyone else? Because I would like also to comment on the question.
There's a little comment that I would like to add. when you try to embed a cybersecurity framework, into your organization, whether it's ISO or is it NIST or COVID or whatever, you have a whole domain dedicated to third-party or vendors, vendor cybersecurity. We should utilize that. I have seen, unfortunately, I have seen some organizations take that lightly, or like they don't actually stress on vendor cybersecurity. So we need to utilize that. We need to leverage that in protecting ourselves. And organizations have to understand that the attacker is always trying to blindside you. They're not gonna come, through your door, knock on your door, and ask he wants to attack you. They will try as much as they can to, come from angles that you don't see. And what's a better angle than a vendor? Because usually you're expecting your vendors to actually be cyber protected, if I may say, when a lot of them, is actually not. So you have to be, careful from that point of view.
Thank you, Muhammad. I would like also to comment on this question. The first thing that we should think about when we approach a cybersecurity protection is to ensure that we don't rely completely on external solution provider, no matter what. Is it a vendor? Is it a system integrator? Is it a distributor? We should have internal skill set and technical know-how to be able to validate whatever was implemented, whatever was recommended, whatever was built in our solutions. In addition to that, we need also to enable the proper visibility within those solutions to ensure that, yes, whatever is configured, reviewed, and even if something was maliciously configured, at least we see the traffic passing through or the behavior that's happening within that system, because we would have different traffic or different behaviors within different system types. For no matter, is it an endpoint security solution, is it an infrastructure solution, is it an inbound solution, is it an outbound monitoring solution, and so the cornerstone for that protection is our internal employees. The second aspect is what the gentleman have already shared, that the contractual work and the pre-qualification of any vendor should be passing through a rigid supply chain controls, that even within your agreement within that vendor, that he is obligated to inform you about any malicious behavior of his employees or any cybersecurity incidents within their company. So you would be aware how to take that action further. Is it maybe there was an email exfiltration or data exfiltration for their customers? So you know how to protect yourself from that. And the discussion for this point would go on hours and hours. So I would just stop here. And Abdullah, if you have any further point that you would like to discuss or any comment to make, please reach me on my personal email. I'll share it in the chat. Thank you very much. And by this, and I believe we are out of time right now, I would like to thank all of our panelists for the great panel we had. And it was really a pleasure to have you all, gentlemen. And I will be looking forward to meet again, inshallah, in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for you.
Thank you all. Pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hani. A pleasure as always. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us and taking your time out. Very interesting session. Next, we're going to the flip side of the conversation. We've heard from the oil and gas, and we've heard from the petrochemical side of things, how cyber resilience and how cybersecurity is to be tackled. Now we're looking at it from the flip side. Our next panel discussion is going to focus on cyber resilience within the utilities sector and energy, moderated by Mr. Ted Green, who's the Chief Operating Officer for Network Perception. Over to you, Ted.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here today. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, no, it's a pleasure to be here for this session. Obviously, cyber resiliency in the utility industry is a key topic. It's something we spend a lot of time thinking about. We really look at it as the ability for utilities to rebound and protect their critical assets and maintain operations throughout cyber attacks. And so, I'm looking forward to a very interesting and active discussion today regarding this. I'll go ahead and let everybody kind of give a quick introduction. I think we're waiting for a few more folks here to join us. I see Abdullah is with us and Hashim. There we go, Shakir. Okay, I think we have one more waiting for Hussein. Oh, there we go. Okay. Since Hussein's last, why don't you go ahead, Hussein, and introduce yourself, give a brief background.
All right. So, how are you, everyone? This is Hussein Al-Tayyib. I've been working on the cybersecurity for almost 6 years, basically covering multiple industries from the telecommunication to the oil and gas industry as well. Currently, I'm holding my bachelor degree in electronics engineering, pursuing the master's degree with SANS, which is well known for providing the well-known SANS training. So they have a master's degree that I'm pursuing with them. I've been working on the industry for some amount of time, covering the different aspects when it comes to the IT and OT as well, trying to embrace the cloud security as well.
Sorry, Hussein, apologies for interrupting, but your volume, can you increase your volume, because I think it's a little faint.
All right, can you hear me right now? Or?
Yes, can everybody else hear him clearly, or is it still a little too faint?
It's a little low, but
currently.
Yeah, this is much better, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So shall I repeat, or everyone heard me before?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
You can go ahead and repeat it. It's okay.
All right, thank you. So yeah, this is Hussein Al-Tayyib. So I have been in the industry for some amount of time, 6 years, more than 6 years in industrial cybersecurity as well as IT cybersecurity. I've been working in telecommunication companies and then moving to the oil and gas, covering the IT and OT. Currently, I'm pursuing my master's degrees with SANS. That would be enough for now.
Great, thank you. I was going to say, Hashem.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hashim Azizi, and computer engineer with 7 years of experience in the cybersecurity and the governance, risk, and compliance field. Currently, I'm working as a GRC manager in TAQA, Industrialization Company.
Great. Abdullah.
Yeah, hello everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning for you, Ted.
Yep.
My name is Abdullah. I have been working for over 8 years in the field of cybersecurity and project management between Saudi Aramco and Engie. Engie, a leader company, a multinational international company in the utility and energy field. I have a master's degree in information protection from Georgia Tech, and I'm currently leading the cybersecurity team in Saudi for Engie.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Shakir?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shakir Al-Hashlan. Graduated from King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals at 2007. Joined several domains and several companies that are leaders in their own domains and in their own right. Worked for about 7 years in the oil and gas sector with Saudi Aramco as a gas oil separation plant network or systems admin, handling all the control systems networks details from DCS, SCADA, both onshore and offshore. Afterwards moved to the water domain, both water pumping for drinking water pumping and wastewater treatment, and currently in one of the energy companies working in a generation business line, also in the domain of control systems and ICS cybersecurity. Worked in industrial control systems cybersecurity ever since 2009, and been there ever since, couldn't even let go of. So published several papers, wrote in several publications, both in the region and internationally, and currently working in, as I said, with power generation, industrial control systems, cybersecurity.
Great. Well, I appreciate everybody being here today. Excited to get your thoughts and learn more about what you have to say. So why don't we get started with our first question here, and it's really about successful digital transformation. So I'll start with you, Hashem. Why do you think cyber security is really crucial to delivering a successful digital transformation strategy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ted, for this wonderful question. Actually, during the last couple of years, most enterprises have been accelerating the pace of their digital transformation based on the adoption of leading edge ICT technologies like cloud computing, virtualization, and other network and IT modern solutions. But at the same time, organizations are still suffering from cyber attacks, which are among the most barriers in the implementation of the digital transformation journey that the companies are adopting. These cyber attacks highlight that there are some pain points, vulnerabilities, weaknesses that are inherent in the current topologies, infrastructures, as well as the governance system of the organizations. And in my opinion, we cannot neglect that the digital transformation projects in the companies nowadays are not affecting all the departments, units, organization structures, and all staff and workers. Having said that, the digital transformation projects, along with the project managers and leaders of these fruitful initiatives, shall work with the cybersecurity in a side-by-side mode and have a coherent approach on delivering these modern services in an efficient and secure manner. I would suggest 4 of what I think are best practices that can assist in delivering a secure digital transformation initiatives. First, organization can establish a digital transformation steering committees and involving the cybersecurity in it. I suggest having frequent meetings in the first interval of its establishments. Second, the services that are to be launched shall have a proper cybersecurity risk assessments from the beginning. Yes, we know that the services maybe will have some effect on the releasing date, but delivering it securely, it's worth in that delay in time rather than being a victim of any cyber attack. Third, I would suggest also that any changes that might arise need to be taken into consideration by the CTO, by the CISOs, and to assess the impacts properly. And the last, which I suggest, is the IT strategy and the cybersecurity strategy, along with the organizational strategy, shall be developed by all departments and shall be in align with the digital transformation initiatives. So there are no holes or on working silos mode between the organizations and business departments.
Interesting. Yeah. It's pointing to the fact of coordination and really working together across teams is so critical. I'm just thinking back to the last session and pointing to the same thing. We're just if people are communicating and coordinating at a high level is really a key to so many aspects of this. I was going to say, Abdullah, I was going to throw the question to you next. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Ted. We had actually a great answer for this question from Hashim and from the previous session. I would like to focus more into the OT now. As we are moving into a digital era and adding more and more smarter devices into an environment that has been installed there since the 80s and the 70s, we are increasing the threat landscape. We are increasing the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses into, I would say, the OT black box. A black box, why I'm saying black box, because this environment has been neglected for decades from cybersecurity perspectives. And introducing such new devices into that network will risk our main objective, which is from that systems, which is the operations. So yes, we definitely need to move forward into that direction. We need to get and ease our life by digitalizing the processes, by digitalizing these systems. However, we need to move with cautious. We need to put cybersecurity as priority number 1 when it comes to implementing any new project or any transformation into that network. And we need to include the cybersecurity team align in strategy, in building that strategy between the cybersecurity and digital transformation to be aligned together and to assess, keep assessing and risk assessment for our network and any additional digitalization, I would say, to that network.
Interesting. Yeah, I think you mentioned a key point. We actually see a lot with our customers is that the degree of difficulty between combining essentially new assets with a lot of older OT assets that were just not these things weren't contemplated when they were put in place. And really
you need to be cautious or you will drop the operations, which is a no for them, a red line.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know, Shakir, could you add to that at all, or to successful digital transformation with cyber?
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, that moving into that direction, moving into adding and moving to a digital transformation without really aligned with the cybersecurity team and your strategy of cybersecurity will introduce actually an impact into your environment. So you need to balance between these two.
Yeah. I was going to ask Shakir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the problem is when we come to the end of these sessions, usually people get bored and you get to the end of the line so quick that any comment that you may give, you risk repeating the idea or repeating yourself so quickly. So I apologize, but here we go. We talked a lot, and I heard a lot about digital transformation, and it's a term that's gaining a buzzword status so quickly. I'm trying to compartmentalize my thoughts when it comes to digital transformation in OT and ICS here. Now, if we are to look at the past year, ever since COVID and the whole start to work remotely, the hyperconnectivity argument that we need to start connecting, you'll see that people started to accept the whole remote working and remote connecting your systems, the OT systems, to the internet in a way that that they never have been doing before. And that introduced the whole digital transformation into the ICS and OT environment in a much more expedited way. Now, when we're talking about, is there a value? Of course, there's a value. We're talking about operational values. You have your systems connected, your downtimes will be much less. Your maintenance values, if you're connecting it to smarter machine learning, or let's say smart systems, that you will start gaining more insight into your system. You stop moving towards maintenance by time schedule, and you start going into maintenance based on uptime, or if the equipment can spare some operational time, it will give it to you based on your insight and your data that you're collecting. So that's a huge value to some companies. Also the cost, there's a huge cost reduction in introducing digital transformation into these environments. Human resources also just came into mind. When you think about it, you don't need a lot of people also in the same geographical place. You can have several different geographical locations, several people, and they can operate your equipment in different geographical locations. But we start the whole discussion of cybersecurity, and I think this is the main topic here. If we are to start weighing the opportunity of digital transformation against the risk of cybersecurity, the whole argument starts to change. Before, people used to not think about introducing more digital transformation technologies into their OT systems. If it works, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? But now the discussion has changed, and quickly you start seeing the cybersecurity officers becoming the obstacle in this discussion. You start seeing the CISO, whoever is in the CISO position, become the obstacle of change. And that is something that we need to think about. Now you have opportunity. Basically what we're talking about here is operational excellence versus the risk. And how are we going to deal with the risk? You need to communicate that if you're in a cybersecurity position, that the whole landscape that we are in is changing. The geographic, the whole geopolitical discussion needs to be addressed. Your situational awareness of the systems and the adversaries around you needs to be addressed. The threats are changing. They started simple, now they're becoming more persistent, more sophisticated, and more aware that they are being targeting ICS systems and industrial systems. So all of that needs to come into the discussion. And yes, we need to look into digitally transforming our equipment because of the value there, but we need to make it in a smart way. Again, to risk repeating some of what our colleagues mentioned, the quote from Ernst & Young, I forgot the name of my colleague who mentioned it, but we need to bake cybersecurity into our digital transformation. I actually believe that is true, and we need to do that from day one of starting our digital transformation journey.
Yeah. No, I think you raised a very interesting point that, you know, kind of an underlying driver of all this is that, you know, digital transformation is really moving beyond just an evolution in efficiency, where it's becoming a necessity to overall competitiveness of companies. And so there's really no stopping it. It's really just a fundamental necessity, and we do have to deal with these issues. We just have to.
Yeah, it has. If you allow me that, digital transformation is basically a new buzzword, right? What we're talking about is IT-OT convergence. It's another form of convergence. And some people will say that convergence is something that is coming. I actually believe it's been in the industry for a long time. You know, bringing in Windows boxes into your OT environment is a convergence. Bringing your TCP/IP Ethernet networks into your system is a convergence. Now, we have been doing that for some time. We just didn't look at it that way for that period of time. And all of that starts the whole, how are you going to deal with it? Oh, now we have all of these boxes have been sitting there since the 80s and early 90s. What are we doing to them? Are we hardening them? Are we doing something to protect them? But the whole discussion came up when we started the whole connect that Ethernet cable to that router that connects to the internet. That's when the discussion started to come up.
Yeah. No, interesting. It's a great point. And I was gonna move on to my next question now for Hussein. You know, it's interesting. Obviously our topic here is cyber resiliency. You know, this is something that's been evolving as a very large, you know, very common topic of discussion these days. You know, in your thoughts, can you give your thoughts on, you know, how does cyber resiliency differ from kind of traditional cybersecurity? What is the main, you know, transformation that's going on here in terms of resiliency as a focus, and how do professionals really, what do they focus on in terms of that to enact cyber resiliency?
So to answer this question, basically, Ted, let's take it from the perspective of, if you meet the CEO, for example, in an elevator, for example, and then he asks you, what do we do currently for cybersecurity to be mature? You are not going to list that we are doing the certain cybersecurity controls in place, like we have an email security proxy or whatsoever, but how really cybersecurity is helping the business to be mature and to serve the customer, whether they outside the organizations, because every organization has internal customers and external customers. So cyber resilience is about basically delivering the different services that are already running in your environment securely. Whether you have a cyber attack, you try to mitigate the cyber attack by having the business resiliency already attached to your cybersecurity strategy, having the business continuity, having the disaster recovery in place. So tomorrow, if there's a cyber attack, you still can resume the operation by having the mitigations in place. And this is really aligned with the different strategies or the different frameworks that we have been using, or we have been adapting or adopting them. Like NIST, for example, they start with the identify the most critical assets. You have the crown jewels and how to protect them in the first place. They have the different protect, respond, and then you have at later stage, which recently NIST have added to anticipate. If something is going to happen, how you are going to respond to that attack. So if you have only 1 minute to respond to the question which the CEO raised before, you don't want to mention how cybersecurity, all this different cybersecurity controls, rather than you want to raise the importance that you understand the mission and the vision of the company. You have the strategy that is already aligned with the mission and vision, and you have the framework that is already, again, aligned to your cybersecurity strategy to continue or to have the business continuity running.
Yeah, no, it's great points. I mean, it's you know, at the end of the day, as an organization, if you can't keep your critical assets functioning through an attack, everything else is irrelevant. You know, you really have to be able to do
exactly
that.
So again, so the cybersecurity wouldn't help like the controls that you have already put in place, but you have to have a backup plan. You have just to let the business continue securely, try just to mitigate the risk.
Yeah. I was gonna say, Hashem, what are your thoughts on, you know, cyber resiliency versus traditional cybersecurity?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ted, and thanks to Shakir, Abdullah, Hussein for their inputs, for their fruitful comments and notes. Actually, well, I think that the cybersecurity describes a company's ability to protect against and avoid the increasing threat from cyber crimes. And the cyber resilience is more concentrating on the availability aspect. As Mr. Hussein said, it refers to the company's ability to mitigate damage, including damage to systems, to processes and reputation and other impacts as well, and carry on once systems or data have been compromised. The cyber resilience involves putting in place the business continuity aspects that can be triggered once there is a crisis or, let's say, a big incident. The professionals nowadays are focusing on cyber resilience because they are aware that the attacks nowadays have become more adverse, more harsher, and more harmful to the organizations. So they are focusing more on the resilience and how will the business can remain up and running and ensure the minimization of disruption as minimum as possible, taking into consideration the proper tools, resources, and solutions.
Great. Okay. Well, you know, this next question, I'm really very curious to see how everybody answers this. This is one for everybody. You know, basically, how are you seeing the evolution of the OT, you know, the OT threats? What's going on? What are you seeing on the ground today overall in terms of the threats to your OT infrastructure? I'll start with you, Abdullah, to kick that off, but I'd like to hear from everybody on this.
Sure. So about this evolution, if you look at it 10 or 15 years ago, you would rarely hear about an OT or ICS attack. Actually, you could count it by a hand. So unfortunately, this idea has stuck into the management minds and the minds of the people working in the OT field. The management of that only IT is targeted. Both companies were investing a ton of money to protect their IT environment, and attackers on the other side were drafting and targeting IT network. So you would hear till recent days that the OT people are saying we are air-gapped, we are protected, don't touch our environment. And this is unfortunate because things has changed. The attacks on the OT and ICS networks has significantly increased. Sophisticated attacks specified to these environments. We have seen attacks to airports, medical centers, oil and gas plants, energy plants. And we have seen attacks that they would actually live in your network. They would stay for months and even more studying your network, studying your traffic to create and drafted a specific attacks for your environment. And these attacks are not only financial, does not only hurt you financially or from data perspective or data leakage. It could even go more than that. It could lead to a gas leak or even explosions that could harm your employees, the civilians around that area. So and from that, and because the OT environments usually is, or actually is a critical, comes within a critical infrastructure and pillars. When we're talking about energy, oil and gas, all of these are pillars of any country infrastructure. These attacks comes with a political reason sometimes, and political, not only a financial reasons. So from my opinion, the focus need to increase more and more into the OT environment. The protection of the ICS networks must be essential nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, and again, I think you raised an interesting point of, it's just a matter of time before we start seeing the impact of these attacks move beyond just the financial ramifications.
Yeah.
And
I remember a quote, but I don't remember who said it, that all companies has been or are being attacked, whether they know it or they don't know it. So, so it's a matter of, do you know that you have been attacked or not?
Exactly. I was gonna say, Hussein, what are you seeing on the ground today?
All right, we have seen the presentation today from Mandiant about the, thanks to him, absolutely, about the latest trends into the cyber attack. Previously, we were having the perception that it was only about disruption to the network, but we have seen just the attack a few months ago, Colonial, the largest pipeline. It was ransomware. It was about collecting money from OT, because the perception before about OT that availability is the most important, it's not always the case. Think about it when you have some secret information in the OT, like secret, for example, chemical formation or something that you don't want your competitors to steal. It becomes like, it becomes very crucial for you that you protect this information. It's not always availability. We have seen that OT cybersecurity, when it goes to the companies that have IT and OT, the focus should be much more to the OT. If you don't have the budget in place, for example, to put the SOC or 24/7 monitoring into the IT, try to put it in the OT, because OT is the most critical asset. So we started to see large attacks focusing in OT. It's not anymore the thing like every organization that have OT is totally separated from the IT. We started to walk through the digital transformation and to see the enterprise resilience to move or to see the convergence between IT and OT. It's not anymore the case that OT is totally separated from the IT. It's actually, there is a convergence. There is a business needs to move some data from the OT to the IT, like the big data and so forth, to do some analytics. So you need to consider, as a cybersecurity professional, all of these happening in the current era, and it will keep increasing. And we have seen, for example, some customers or some organizations moving the Purdue Level 3 to the cloud. So you can imagine. I mean, it's really a big topic talking about OT cybersecurity, but the good thing, or on the brighter side, we started to see some vendors, or a lot of vendors are focusing more into integrating ICS cybersecurity. Started to see MITRE specifically, for example, as techniques and procedures to the OT, which is really good and give us hope to protect the organization or the most critical assets if you are working in utilities sector.
Interesting. And it says, Hashem, what are you seeing in terms of the cyber threat evolving?
Yeah. I think the nature of cyber attacks is constantly in flux. Sometimes the denial of service attacks are rising, APTs, injection attacks as well. But I see nowadays that the ransomware are really start hitting the companies heavily in a way that the insurance companies that they are offering the cybersecurity insurance are separating the ransomware attack in a separate section and offer a very expensive insurance policy against it. Just taking, for examples, only in May 2021, there were big 4 ransomware attacks, such as the world's largest meat processing company, JBS, was the victim of a ransomware. Ireland's National Health Service, the Health Service Executive, HSE, was the victim also of a ransomware. Colonial Pipeline, the largest fuel pipeline in the United States, was the target for ransomware, and the energy company shut down the pipeline and later paid a $5 million ransom. The Norwind Energy Technology Company was the victim of a ransomware also. The attack resulted in the shutdown of water and water treatment facilities in more than 200 municipalities, affecting approximately 85% of the Norwegian population. So I think ransomware is really emerging these days, and cybersecurity staff shall take the preventative measures against it and do the proper mitigations, as my colleagues said. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I just realized, Shakir, I didn't mean for you to go last to get on this question, so I'll ask if you have any comments, but also the next question I was going to throw over to you, which is maybe you can kind of wrap them together, is, what can organizations do to ensure that critical systems don't get interrupted during these attacks?
No worries. Well, all right, so I'll try to tie it all together. From my point of view, there are about 5 steps that people need to consider if you're talking about OT cybersecurity. Step number 1 is going to be always, and again, taking the risk of sounding like a cliche, that you need to have a strategy. Having a strategy based on cybersecurity for developing your security systems, your policies, your technology selection procedures, all of that needs to be done in step 1. Then you can start going into identifying your assets, both hardware and software, having your SBOMs, your software bill of materials. And once you have all of that collected, you have at least something of a completed list. And from my point of view, if you have it categorized from most critical to least critical, now you have a complete, somewhat complete visibility of your assets and what do you need to protect them. Now, you have that, you need to go in the field, you need to have more like a risk assessment. Now that can be done more like assessing your systems, both from if something happens in a cyber domain and what are the physical consequences of such an event if it happens. So for example, if something happens to the controller of, for example, a gas turbine, or let's make it a little bit simpler. If something happens to a controller that controls a motor that feeds fuel into a gas turbine, what are the steps? What will happen? What are the chains, the chain of events that will could start, and what are the consequences? Is it just a unit shutdown? That's fine. You'll be losing some money. If it's an explosion and you might have life loss events, then yeah, we need to sit down and talk. Now, that's going to be a beginning of having something more like a collection management framework, where you start collecting all of the information of your hardware and software and what are the consequences of each attribute of that item, and then feeding that into something like an attack tree that you need to develop and understand. If such an attack, such an event happens, what's going to what are the chain events? And you can use several items to assist you in that. You can have something like friendly intelligence. You have your intelligence agencies in the region. They will feed you what you need of intelligence so you can develop your policies. Situational awareness, you understand what's going on. What are you need to be aware of the attacks that are in the wild. So I understand if, for example, if I have an OPC server, what are the attacks that could impact me in the field, whether am I a target or not? I could be just a victim of chance. So something like a Havoc's attack could be a risk. And also awareness of the domains, expertise, you can use that. Now, all that ties into risk assessment and understanding your scenarios. Once you know that, then you can start picking your controls that you're going to be deploying based on your risk appetite, of course, and your financial requirements. Now that is a whole other discussion. You need to sit with your management and see what can you squeeze out of them. And to tell the truth, most management nowadays, they understand the risk, and now we don't have any excuses. We used to love taking them as an excuse. Now we don't have any excuses, and it's up for the professionals to understand where should we start putting our controls. Now, after that is the last step, which is basically rinse and repeat. GRC, look in your compliance, look at your assets, and repeat the previous step. Unless something shows up, something different, then you need to go back to the risk assessment phase. Just moving in between these 5 steps, I would say you'll have something of a complete and a closed loop workflow that you can really cover most of your bases with. So yeah, I would say in a nutshell, that's what, or at least that's what I would do.
Great. No, I think it's fantastic. Very solid advice. And I know we're kind of bumping up here into our timeline, so I'll try and squeeze one more question in here for Abdullah. I was going to ask, we spent the last 45 minutes talking about what keeps us all up at night. What are some of the, maybe on the other side of the ledger here, what are some of the positives that you see in the industry that show movement towards better securing the OT infrastructure? What are some of the good things we're seeing?
Yeah, I hear you. Definitely, there are some positives. At least, for example, in Engie now, we are seeing a way better management supports and willing to invest more and more money into securing securing the OT environment and extending the visibility to cover those environments or black box, I would say. So, and globally, we are seeing the company's leaders are noticing the importance of focusing on that area. And I believe the reason is they have seen what impact both financially and from reputational from that could happen from a cyber attack. So they are willing to, I would say they are saying, let's invest in the beginning and save ourselves from such attack. The second things that I'm seeing is the collaboration between the IT team and the OT team. Thanks to we have a new regulations here. Actually, it has been since 2018 from NCA ECC regulations in Saudi, which enforce companies to have their CISO reporting to the head of the company. And this has actually raised and empowered the CISO office and the security team to over the operational team. For years, they have the lead into what to happen or what to not happen in their environment. But now with empowering this CISO to overlook both IT and OT cybersecurity has led to a better collaboration and between the two teams. The third item, I would say, to some extent, we are seeing a better collaboration and helping from the vendor. Again, to some extent. And personally, I believe there is a room for improvement from that side. I think, and I would like to take this opportunity to encourage the vendors to, especially the OT and the DCS vendors, to really chip in, I would say, to really help us increase and our cybersecurity, to help, because at the end of the day, it is we are the same boat. If an attack happened to a company in the OT environment, always the DCS vendor's name comes with it. Just remember all the attacks, the previous attacks, if you Stuxnet, for example, and all other attacks, when it harmed the reputation, both the company and the DCS vendors. So we need to work together. We need to help each other. They need to improve and design their systems securely, I would say, to reach a better digital transformation and a safe one.
Great. Well, I know, Karthik. Looks like we're a little over our time here. Do we? I see we have a question. I don't know if we can entertain that or current.
You could go ahead and take the question.
Okay, I'll throw out here. We have a question, and whoever feels free to answer this. What are possible practical cyber attacks on the energy generation or distributing stations that could cause a disaster, such as an explosion or harming the electronic equipment in a whole city, at homes and offices, etc.? So what are actually practical attacks that could happen that could basically bring down the grid at a local level?
Well, if I may, can I take that question?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Well, if we're talking about distribution, we saw the attacks on Ukraine. The worst that happened was people were without power for a certain number of days. Now, when it comes to power generation, I wouldn't say that it's not going to be straightforward. Now, the good thing about OT, granted that they are closed systems, they depend on being diverse, they depend on being complex, they depend on being redundant for their security, but they don't depend on security. That is a problem. But the previous mentioned attributes are pretty good in protecting them. For example, if something happens to a controller or some cyber command came in and sent, for example, an overdrive control or something like that, the machine it's not going to destroy itself without some physical protection stopping it. Let's say if you will try to spin a turbine and move it into an overspeed state that could break the blades inside, destroy it completely, and maybe the fragments will try to or may hit someone and either injure him or kill him. That's not something easy to do unless you will be removing some physical protections, some governor somewhere, or some mechanical brakes that will stop it. If you go into all of the historical records of such events that have some cyber elements and look at the actual report, you'll find that either the event was stopped because of some protection, the actual protection systems that stopped it, or some physical, let's say, lever that went up and blocked the whole, for example, cracking tower. Something of an example, I would say, the event in Texas. I think it was BP facility. It could have been worse, that some explosive gases boiled and went over the cracking tower, but it should have been really bad. Now, the actual physical protections didn't work, and that caused the event. But if they have been working, that could have stopped it. Granted, the whole cyber protections weren't even there. Now, could it happen? Yes. Having unlimited resources, getting some internal documentation, some PNIDs, manuals, and this is if you were to, if I'm going to be the pessimistic kind, then if someone has the resources, let's say a state-sponsored entity, and they started collecting enough information and they get some intelligence and they gather numerous PhDs, numerous people who are expert in that equipment, all coming in together to attack you, then yeah, they could find some way to bypass all of that. But is it simple? No, it's not.
Yeah. Great. Well, I don't know. I think I appreciate everybody. I think we've gone a fair amount over our time here. I'll turn it back over to Karen. But I appreciate everybody's involvement. This was fantastic. Good insight.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your time and for your participation. With this, we have come to the end of the conference. Our next Cyber Warriors Conclave is scheduled for August 25th. It's the Qatar edition, and we shall share the details shortly for that. Thank you once again, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Organization and everyone and the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdullah, Shakir, and Hussein. I've learned so much from you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I've learned. Thank you very much. It was a great discussion.
Thank you, everyone.